Hi, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Gram. I'm your host, Kameese Davis. In this space, we spotlight trailblazing women in beauty, diving deeply into their triumphs and trials. Today, we've got an amazing guest, Kameese Davis. Kameese is a multi-award winning entrepreneur and the brains behind the hugely respected natural hair care brand, Nylah Naturals. Welcome, Kameese.
Keisha, thank you so much for having me.
You are more than welcome. Before we start, actually, can I just confirm, is it Nylah's Naturals or Nylah? Because I know when you first launched, from what I believe, it was Nylah. Is that correct?
Yes, it's Nyla's.
So it's Nylah's. Okay. So
Yeah,
Nylah's. So correct
yeah.
me for the intro. Yeah, welcome on board to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you there, have you here, sorry. You've done some remarkable things in the short space of time you
Mhm.
have been around, and I can't wait to dive deeply into your journey as well as the trials and triumphs, as I mentioned, that you've encountered along the journey. So
Mhm.
before we get into all that good stuff, can we go back a bit and can you talk about the journey from the conception of Nylah to what it is today?
Yes. So I think the start of the business is really multifaceted. Ultimately, it started with a desire for me wanting to ensure that my daughter had access to products that worked and access to products that would showcase the beauty of her natural hair. And why that was important for me is I went on what I call a journey of racial discovery. So, not so much personal discovery, but racial discovery, where I started to deep dive into the history of the Black diaspora in a way that isn't typically spoken about in mainstream educational platforms, right? So, I really started to understand our history as a people, our contributions to society, and how mainstream society has been responsible for negative self perceptions, particularly in the realm of beauty and how we present ourselves as women, and how that took us away from wearing our hair in its natural state. So with that, what I coin racial esteem, because it's really important, I think, for all people to have self-esteem, but also an esteem in the group in which they belong. So in the development of that racial esteem, I moved away from chemically straightening my hair and started the process of wearing my hair in its natural state. And this was long before the natural hair movement. So it was something that was really difficult because there wasn't the information that's available now in terms of how to care for our hair, how to style our hair. But also, it was really unusual for a Black woman to wear her hair in a natural state. And then subsequently, when I had my daughter, I also wanted her from her earliest stage to not have to go through what I went through. So I went through a process of unlearning, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I had to unlearn that my natural hair wasn't beautiful. I had to unlearn that the complexion of my skin wasn't desirable. Like all of these things I had to unlearn. And for my daughter, I just wanted her to know. I wanted her to know that her authentic self and the features that are associated with her racial characteristics are absolutely beautiful and perfect and fine. And so for me, her hair was a really important part of that dynamic and that teaching. And I needed products ultimately that would showcase to her the beauty of her hair. And that was difficult. It was difficult for several reasons. One, all of the products, again, at the time were around altering the curl pattern and the nature and characteristics of Afro type hair. And secondly, a lot of the products that were available were also really, really toxic. And my daughter had seborrheic dermatitis and eczema, which meant that the products that I could typically use or would access for us were causing inflammation and irritation to her and her skin. And I didn't want that. So I wanted to showcase the beauty of her hair, but I also wanted her to be comfortable. And when I couldn't, I searched and searched for a product that would do both of these things,
Yeah.
and I couldn't find anything in the UK.
Mhm.
So I started exporting products in from America, and I was like, can find something great. But after a while, that became unsustainable because it's like the cost of the product, the cost of shipping, the cost of customs, the lead times that it takes to get into the country. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna create it. If they can do it there, I can do it here. And I decided that I would create a range of hair care products that would ultimately help me care for my daughter's hair, but also help other women discover how beautiful Afro hair is.
Amazing, amazing story. And can you put some timelines to this from even to go back further, actually, when you said you had to go through your own process of discovery and racial
Yeah,
esteem? What was happening,
yeah.
culturally speaking, when you went on this journey?
So I done a Black History course with a renowned Black history historian in the UK, Robin Walker,
Okay.
and that was around 2008.
Hmm.
And I was on this course for about 18 months. So around 2009,
Okay.
um, late 2008, early 2009, I stopped chemically processing my hair.
Processing your hair.
And I had my daughter late 2010.
Okay. So would you
So
say then coincided with the emergence of the natural hair movement in
having
the,
her, yes.
yeah,
Having
yeah,
her, yes.
yeah.
That definitely was when the natural hair movement was very in its very infancy stages.
Hmm.
But of course, the learnings about my hair happened before I was at least exposed to the natural hair movement.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, and then the decision to develop products started as early as 2011, but again, it was an idea.
Yeah,
I spoke to friends and family. Um, Interesting story about speaking with family about that idea because my cousin went off and did her own brand. Um, and I'd started the mechanisms of actually developing products probably around 2013.
okay. And then what was your background prior to developing products? Did you have any experience in hairdressing or the likes of before that?
Doing my own hair? No. So from a very early stage, I would do my own hair. I would braid my own hair, style my own hair.
Yeah,
I learned to cane roll. I think I was like 10 or 11 when I learned to cane roll. I was
yeah,
about 13 when I learned to do extensions. So I would often do hairdressing for other people in
sure.
natural styles, but outside of that, nothing at all. No.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because what would you say then was your career aspirations prior to doing what you do now?
Very corporate. In the corporate space.
Yeah.
I am a trained and qualified, believe it or not, careers advisor.
Okay.
So it's incredibly different. So I worked in the employability space,
Hmm.
and I've worked with various educational providers, schools, colleges, universities in helping young people to navigate their own career choices.
Hmm.
I also had a business in that respect as well. So I would offer CEIAG, which is Careers Consultancy, Information Advice and Guidance Strategies to schools. So I would actually go in, write their strategy in accordance with the government educational objectives, and then I would hire careers advisors to go in and implement and deliver the career strategy in various schools in the West Midlands.
Wow. That's so interesting because it's like your career aspirations and your passion has just combined to create what you have today. That's really, really
I
interesting.
suppose the um, entrepreneurial aspect of what I was doing before has combined in this
Yeah.
respect. And then I consider myself to be a bit of a geek. So I get quite fixated on topics. Anything that I'm interested in, I really fixate on them. And that has been helpful in many ways in building the foundations of what we have today with Nylas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, okay, let's continue with the story. So, you started creating these products, and you were, I guess, testing them and trying them with friends and family members. You said,
So initially, I started to do things at home. So I was buying like shea butter oils. I learned how to make cold press soaps, and I was doing things that I thought were helpful in caring for hair. And as I started to share these formulations with friends and family, I realized actually that I didn't have the scientific knowledge that is required to build a high efficacy product, right? So we're looking at things like how raw materials worked in synergy with one another, the importance of emulsification. Do we want oil in water or do we want water in oil, right? The importance of having different types of ionic surfactants and how that would work in decongesting the hair and decongesting the scalp. And this was information that I didn't know and realized that I actually needed a qualified cosmetic scientist to help me to execute formulations that would
mm-hmm.
work. And it's all good and well having great intentions to develop natural plant-based products, but I think you need to understand the science of hair and you
Mm-hmm.
need to understand the science of the raw materials in order to make something that works. And whilst I could research and understand the science of hair, I needed cosmetic scientists to help to build out that formulation. So after a while of trial and error with formulations that just weren't giving the longevity of efficacy that I wanted, I set off to try and find a cosmetic scientist that would help. And that wasn't as easy as I had anticipated. Again, because many of the scientists at the time were accustomed to Black hair habits being centered around changing the characteristics of our curl and coil patterns. And they were not familiar with the breadth of raw materials that were plant-based, natural, and non-toxic that I wanted to include. So I went with this list. This list of raw materials that were an absolutely not, you would not include these raw materials in the formulations that I'm making. And that really caused the cosmetic scientists to think outside of the box, and some of them weren't willing to do so. So there was a series and a period of trying to find a cosmetic scientist that was willing to work within the realms of caring for Black hair in its natural state, understanding Black hair in its natural state, and then also eliminating a lot of the raw materials that they were accustomed to using. And that took some time. And then once I found that person, there was then a process of formulation, trial error, making sure that things performed because um, if we take one example, emulsification, we need a lot of oils and rich formulations. The coilier our hairs is, the richer the formulations need to be in many respects. And so it was a process of trying to find a raw material that was plant-based and natural, but then could hold and stabilize all of the um, natural products that we were using in the formulation. And that took several years. That took several
Wow.
years.
I think this is so important to highlight because I think there's a perception that setting up or creating a hair brand and launching it is quite an easy process. And it's kind of like a get rich quick scheme. You hear about success stories like yourself and others. So I think it's really important to highlight the journey. So during this whole process, what sustained you to see it through from that initial idea to what we see now?
I was driven by a desire to, I was driven by a desire to ensure that Black women had the experience of their authentic beauty. And I'm going to break that down for you.
Mhm,
For years throughout my childhood and my adolescence, I didn't know what it was like to feel authentically beautiful, if that makes sense.
mhm,
So I knew what it was like to feel beautiful when I put on a weave. I knew what it was like to feel beautiful when I straightened my hair. I didn't know what feeling beautiful was like when my hair was freshly washed and it had shrunk and it was in its natural state. And it wasn't until I decongested my mind from all of the negative perceptions around Black beauty that I started to see myself in a different way.
Mhm.
And I started to appreciate how beautiful my authenticity was. And I wanted other women to know what that felt like. I was also driven by a desire to ensure that we had access to products that were healthy. You know, in the whole process of researching and understanding what the Black beauty landscape looked like, I realized very early on we were being poisoned, right? There's no other way to say it. These big brands were loading products that we typically access with really harmful raw materials that have been linked to cancer, that has been linked to endocrine disruption, that has been linked to skin irritation problems, that has been linked to hormonal fluctuations. It was just crazy. It was scary, the research that I started to uncover. And like I said, I'm a geek, right? So I don't go surface level. I'm always digging. Let's go deeper. Let's understand what's happening here. And so I was alarmed. I was like, you know, can I swear? Can I
Yeah,
curse?
of
So
course.
like, shit, they're trying to keep us.
Yeah,
So, you know, and some people might think that's extreme, but if you look at the research now, Silent Spring Institute brought out some research a couple of years ago that says 80%, 80% of products marketed towards Black women are significantly more toxic than products marketed to other demographics. You can't tell me that there's no intentionality behind
yeah,
that, right?
yeah,
So I wanted to give us a healthy option. We deserve a healthy option. We deserve products that work. We deserve products that are going to showcase our beauty. And we deserve a brand that has a no compromised approach to how that's delivered. And, you know, that's what I was driven by. Ultimately, that's what kept me going. That's what keeps me going.
wow, that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And it's such a lovely legacy as well for your daughter to know that, it's named after her and it was
Yeah,
started because of the needs and concerns you had regarding her hair.
and that's another thing as well. You know, I wanted her to be able to look at a brand with her name on it and know that it was successful. Like her name, Nylah, when I was looking into name choices for her, it's an
Mhm.
East African name and it meant to be successful.
Yeah,
And so it transpired that I would name a company after her. And it was like, okay, this has to
yeah.
be successful. Yeah.
Fantastic. So how long was the process from the start of you creating this product to, because I recall seeing it in Boots, I want to say, actually you say because my mind is terrible. I've got no concept of time anymore. But I do recall seeing it in Boots, and then we met shortly afterwards when you were awarded with the Precious Award, which I was privileged enough to present to you. So yeah, so talk to us about that. And was that always the end goal for you, to be widely accessible to Black women across the country?
I mean, initially when I launched the business, I must say, you know, I have experience as a service-based entrepreneur. Being a FMCG, is that it? Fast-moving consumer goods? Yeah.
Mm.
Entrepreneur is requires a different strategy, right?
Mm.
So there was a lot of personal development, I will say, in the journey, in understanding how to position my company in a way that was appeasing in the product space. And so my initial strategy was to be accessible in stores such as Holland and Barrett's, Boots, and Superdrug.
Mhm.
We had offers for all of those large retailers. I turned down Holland and Barrett's. what I thought they were going to be a fantastic fit. You know, they have
Mm.
a strong demographic of Black women who access Hallett and Barrett's for healthcare products and healthcare information. However, the cost of listing was just unrealistic, and the way that they wanted to squeeze the margins and the cost of it on a small
Mm.
business would have meant the possibility of imploding had
Oh, wow.
I had um, executed on that opportunity. So I decided to turn them down.
Mhm.
With Boots and Superdrug, we were successfully listed. But then again, as a very small business, and you have to, you know, in 2021, 2022, I was a solo entrepreneur. There's just me. There was no team, right? It was just me. I still had my other business. So the requirements of being listed in the store was extremely expensive. So it was very costly in terms of resources, and it was very costly in terms of time. And so I decided, actually, from a business growth perspective, it wouldn't be conducive to being in those retail partnerships now, because of course they're squeezing on margins and then they own the customer. I need to be able to understand the customer data in order to
Mm.
grow sufficiently. And I need to grow in a way that's not going to drive our customers potentially to a store where our competitors are
Yeah.
also accessible and available. So I made the strategic decision to pull out of retail store.
Mhm.
However, we're still incredibly accessible. We're accessible online. We deliver
Yeah.
standardly 48 hours. You can get the products in 24 hours. And the way consumer behavior is changing, a lot of customers are now discovering online and
Yeah.
purchasing products.
And most of us shop online now, don't we, for our products and stuff? So it makes total sense. So we have to also touch on your appearance on Dragon's Den in 2021. I remember turning on my TV and seeing you. I'm like, oh my God, I know her. What was that experience like? Because it looks so daunting, but you are so confident and you are so knowledgeable about the space you represent and your products. So you did brilliantly as expected, and you also secured funding, which you eventually turned down, I believe. So can you talk to us
Indeed.
more about that whole experience?
Bear with me a second. I'm just going to turn
Mm.
off this speaker. I realize it's
Sure.
just interrupted.
Mhm.
So Dragon's Den. Oh, where do you want to start? Um, so this was it 20,
20,
2019,
okay.
2019.
Okay.
I was watching the last series, and you know, at the end it comes up, if you're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, you know, apply, whatever. And I just read a book from Shonda Rhimes called The Year of Yes, where
Yes.
she talks about, I love that book. Have you read it?
Yes.
Awesome book. And she talks about saying yes to every opportunity that might come her way. So I was like, yeah,
I'm
yes,
gonna do
right. So I should have banged the table, but I was like, yes, gonna do it. So I applied, didn't think anything of it. Had a call in 2020, invited me down to, you know, see the producers, went through the whole shortlisting process, and was eventually invited into the den in October of 2020. That's when we filmed. Um, and the experience was really surreal, actually.
Mm.
You know, you grow up as I did, watching Dragon's Den, you know, shouting at the screen when the entrepreneurs don't know their numbers, and you know, seeing these formidable business professionals and entrepreneurs who are multimillionaires, who exude everything that you want to achieve. And then you walk into the den and you're faced with having to pitch your business to them. And it was a very surreal moment. What you saw, I think, was like a 15-minute segment of 2 hour grilling. I remember looking at the time before I walked in, and it was 8. And when I looked at the time when I came out, it was about 10:15 in the night.
2 hours.
Yeah, yeah. They
Wow.
they grill. They do grill. Um, and it was, you know, I look back at that moment, and there's good parts about it. There's parts that I love. You know, I was able to you know, if you see it as a marketing exercise, you're able to market your business to 3 million people in a
Yeah.
way that you cannot afford as a small business owners, so I would definitely recommend it from a
Yeah.
marketing perspective. And
Mhm.
it literally propelled the business forward after that,
Yeah.
and no questions asked. However, I do have a bit of embarrassment about it.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I
Why?
do. When I look back, I'm a little bit embarrassed about it. I think because I got so emotional. I am emotional person. If you know me personally, like Bambi's mom died, I'm gonna cry, right? Um, that's me. That is just me. Um, and crying on national TV, not just crying, but ugly crying on
Oh,
national
it's
TV.
so funny you say that because I don't even remember that part. I really don't.
Watch it. I mean,
No.
if you go on YouTube and see the bloody thumbnail, it's me like, and it won't go away, and I can't live it
No,
down.
but I'd
Um,
imagine that's just real. That must be like the culmination of all your hard work to know that
yeah,
you've gotten to that point and you achieved what you set out to do by, I guess, appearing on that show. It makes
yeah,
total sense to me.
yeah. It was nice. It was nice to get an offer. It wasn't the first time I had approached an investor, I would say, to talk about our proposition. And you get, when you're fundraising, you understand that you get used to no's. It's like part of the process.
Mm,
So when, they were all simultaneously saying no, that was quite an emotional moment for me. And then when she said yes, it's like, wow, a yes. But it's also, I, if I could change one thing about my Dragon's Den experience, it would have been the timing that
mm,
I went into the den. And I say that to say, when I went into the den, the business was still very much in its infancy stages. I wasn't doing any proactive marketing at all. It was all
mm.
by word of mouth. And of course, the revenue that I had generated reflected that.
Yeah.
And so I think had I gone into the den at the point in my entrepreneurial journey where I started to execute on a more robust marketing strategy,
Mhm.
and being able to really demonstrate from a financial and revenue perspective the size of the market, I think the offer would have been very different. She offered me £50,000 for 40% of the business,
Mhm.
which I understand from her perspective, the revenue didn't demonstrate the size of the market, but I still felt that it wasn't a fair valuation of the business. And subsequently, I turned it down. We did revise the offer after the den, but I still subsequently turned it down because I felt the offer was undervaluing the
The
business, the
business.
market, and more
Yeah.
importantly, I think it was undervaluing me as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. So I made the decision to walk away from it, which was hard. It was a
Yeah.
hard
But on
decision.
reflection, I guess it was the right decision, right? Because you've gone on to obtain like venture capital and your
Yeah,
brand continues to grow.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know what we would have done if
Mm.
I accepted it. I don't know because she has content. I don't know. But what I
Yeah.
can say is that not accepting it worked out in this way. And
Yeah.
this way is amazing and still really favorable. And shortly after that experience, I raised the revenue of the business in excess of six figures.
Hmm.
We managed to secure some really formidable investors and an advisory board, and an advisory board. And
Yeah.
subsequently, we received the biggest VC investment given to any woman in the Birmingham area
Yeah.
in 2023. So it worked
Another
out.
remarkable achievement. Really, really, you just continue to excel. So,
Thank you.
topic I know you were quite keen to discuss is the topic of hair loss as it pertains to Black women. Can you, first of all, before we go into it, explain why you're so keen to address this topic and create formulations to help alleviate hair loss or signs of hair loss and that type of thing?
Oh, we slightly expanded our product offering into hair loss, because it's something that I experienced. And I didn't experience in a way that, you get a little bit of hair shedding, which is probably derived from stress or vitamin deficiency. Like I developed a very aggressive genetic type of alopecia, which is progressive, aggressive, and difficult emotionally to deal with. So I have a type of alopecia that I've been diagnosed with twice called CCCA. It starts in the crown of the head. It will continue to expand out and can cause permanent hair loss through scarring.
Mm.
And when I started to lose my hair, bearing in mind I've got a hair care brand, so it's not a good look, right? There's this, say that lightly, but there's an additional pressure. When you have a hair care brand, there is an additional pressure to showcase how your products work. And experiencing hair loss is not going to support your brand mission, as difficult as that is to say, it's true. And in the process of understanding and going through that emotional challenge of losing my hair, then trying to hide it, um, I realized that 50% of Black women globally before the age of 40 will experience hair loss. And there are many factors for this. There are styling choices, so we've all heard of traction alopecia, which comes through the mechanics of how we style our hair. There is nutritional based hair loss, and there is hormonal based hair loss, and there is genetic based hair loss, and mine was genetic. And I realized in trying to find a solution to that we had again been disserviced as Black women. We'd been disserviced. We'd been disserviced from the healthcare industry. We had a disservice from the cosmetic industry, and we had a disservice in our own community in that we weren't talking about this. Like 50% of us are experiencing it, but no one's talking about it. And when I was trying to access products that would help my hair to recover, what I was finding was two sets of products. I was finding products that were designed for mass market consumption, which had some pretty nasty side effects, but also were not formulated to meet the characteristics of my hair type. Um, or I was discovering products that were based on a lot of anecdotal evidence, but nothing that was hard factual science, and things that were being made in people's kitchen, um, based on things like castor oil, rosemary oil, where there was no data no substantial data to support its efficacy. And again, I was like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, gloves off, let's make
Yeah.
something. But it's, what I will say is I haven't cured hair loss. If I had cured hair loss, I would be a billionaire,
Yes.
right? So I haven't done that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have done is I've identified raw materials that can help to support follicular regeneration in people who are experiencing several types of hair loss, and also a system and processes to help to support that follicular regeneration, or in my case, slow down the acceleration of the hair loss that I
Yeah.
am ultimately experiencing because it's genetic, right? So I've slowed mine right down to the point that when I see my dermatologist, she's like, "What are you doing? I wish everyone was doing what you're doing." Because
Mm-hmm.
I understand it's about inflammation. So how do I ensure that I've got, reduced inflammation in my body, and really looking at anti-inflammation practices? How do I ensure that I'm reducing cortisol levels in my body, that I'm keeping my nutritional um, levels really optimized to support with the mechanisms of stem cell metabolism, so it can create hair cells, and I've taken that knowledge and I've put it into a system which I call a hair care habit, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not use these drops and you're going to turn into Rapunzel. Like nobody can do that, right?
Yes.
They haven't figured that out yet, right?
Yeah.
And anyone that tells you they can do that, they are lying to you. But what we have is a habit system that will support your body's processes of
Mm-hmm.
regenerating.
Okay. So what advice would you give to someone now who is experiencing hair loss of any kind? You've described several incidences there. Would you still say the first port of call is to go and see a GP and get a diagnosis first before using products as you've just
I
described?
would say before, I would say simultaneously,
Right.
right? So, and the reason why I say simultaneously is because, again, studies show 45% of Black women that approach our doctors with a hair care issue, we are not supported. They tell us to stop wearing braids and go long, right?
Hmm.
So that whole process of getting them to respond in the way that they need to might take some time. During
Mm.
that process, you need to have a product that's going to help
Yeah.
slow it down. So what I would say is, um, get a product that's based on science and clinical data, one, and also understand what the causes of your hair loss is. And you
Hmm.
can do that through several methods. One, you need a blood test. We need to do a blood test looking at ferritin levels, B12 levels, vitamin D levels. We also need to look at thyroid and hormonal responses in the body. Whilst we're doing that, we need some DHT blockers. So DHT is dihydrotestosterone, and dihydrotestosterone is what is the killer of hair strands. It basically takes the hair out of its anagen phase, which is the growth phase, and pushes it into the shedding and exiting phase of the scalp. And whilst it's doing that, it also causes the follicles to miniaturize. So the less DHT that we have in the body, if we combat that message, the longer we're going to keep our hair in the growth phase, and we're going to reduce the processes of follicular miniaturization. We also want to be focusing on ensuring that we've got optimum nutrient levels. So taking a supplement that has been proven to support with hair growth. So we've
Hmm.
developed, as part of our system, supplements with a pharmacist, all again based on natural materials, but with one raw material that has been clinically proven to increase the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle. So things like that's going to really help. We want anti-inflammatory responses, so doing things like juicing, drinking turmeric, reducing stress in the body, getting optimum sleep. Like it's a holistic
Hmm.
approach. It's not castor oil, ladies. It's not black castor oil. I don't care who told you it was. It's
Really?
not, right. It's
Yeah.
not black castor oil, right? So all of these things are important. And, when we're going to our doctors, another thing that we're building out with our trichologist is um, letters that you can download for yourself to help you in the fight for getting the support you need with your
Hmm.
doctors.
And this is
You
all
know,
available on your
this will
website?
be available.
Will it
This
be?
will be
Okay.
available soon.
Yeah. Hmm.
Because again, when we go to our doctors, we need to be able to fight for them sending us to a dermatologist and fight
Yeah.
for them getting the blood tested. And unless we know what to ask for,
Yeah.
sometimes the GP don't even know what they're doing, right?
Yeah. So true.
Um,
But
they don't know.
I know as well, it's such a terrifying experience. Funny enough, on a previous episode, I was talking about the two incidences when I experienced hair loss. Once when I was a student, and it may have been stress related. It was like a little ball patch in the back of my hair that my hairdresser discovered. Bearing in mind, I was relaxing my hair at the time as well. So that had probably has something to do with it as well. But I just remember it being terrifying, me not having a clue, her not having a clue either on what it caused it, what I could do to repair the issue. And eventually it just grew back. But I just remember that terror because it could be a number of things, right?
And that's the thing as well, like, for some of us, it grows back once we eliminate stressors or once we get our vitamins optimized, it will grow back, right?
Mhm.
But for like my case and so many other women who have a genetic form of hair loss or a hormonal related hair loss, unless we understand what to do, it's just going to continue to get worse. And I'm seeing women who have got scarring alopecia because
Mhm.
they've been trying castor oil and rosemary oil and peppermint, and they've been trying these things, and these things are going to aggravate and irritate the scalp. So that's also going to contribute to the inflammation, which is
Mhm.
going to result in quicker scarring, right? And then once we've got that scar tissue there, the follicle's dead, it's not growing back.
Yeah.
And that can be inhibited
Mhm.
and it can be reversed. And it can all, at the very worst, really slow down if you get the right treatment at the right time. And a lot of us are not getting the right treatment at the right time. So what I want to do with Nyla's is say, you know what? It might be actually that we don't have the right solution for you because your type of alopecia is aggressive. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to now send you to our trichologist who's going to do a referral to a dermatologist to
Mm-hmm.
get you the support you need. It might be that, but what
Yeah.
we're doing is every woman that will come onto our platform will have the opportunity to assess where they are,
Yeah.
get the
And will that
information.
be, as well as products, will you be offering services where they can speak to someone either
We have a
virtually like this?
trichologist, we
Yeah.
have a trichologist and a
Yeah.
dermatologist where they can book
Amazing.
an appointment and have a conversation and have that kind of early medical advice to signpost them to the right support services or give them,
Mm-hmm.
empower them, sorry, to speak and advocate for themselves in the healthcare profession so they can get their
Yeah.
support. So let me give you an example. We have done consumer trials because before I put anything on the market, I wanted to know it worked. We've done
Mm-hmm.
consumer trials, we've got clinical evidence to substantiate our raw materials. And with our consumer trials, we had ladies who had been suffering from hair loss for several years for different reasons. And one of these ladies, I'll call her D, because I don't want to say her name, but D had very aggressive CCCA, the scarring, everything. And when she came to see our trichologist, we had to give her the news that we can't help this now. Like the hair that has been lost is
Mm-hmm.
permanently lost. But
Mm-hmm.
what we can do is save the hair that's still there.
Right.
And then watching her go through that emotion because she was still desperately looking for a solution and still willing to pour her money down the drain
Yeah.
and all of these things that are not going to work. And watching her go through that emotional realization, she cried and then she said, okay,
Yeah.
she accepted. And then she said, okay, let's focus on the hair that's there.
Yeah.
And she's saving the hair that's there. And she's learning how to style the hair that's there. And she's enjoying the hair that's there. And she's no longer in this desperate search to try and recover the hair that won't come back.
Yeah.
And I think that was watching that moment for her was very freeing. Like, I wish we got there earlier. I wish we got there before there wasn't the scarring.
Yeah.
But for her, we didn't. I want to get there for someone else
Mm-hmm.
before the scarring. I'm really emotional. So
Oh.
sorry. I get to see, I told you I'm a crier. But
No.
I'm so, it doesn't have to get to that stage.
Yeah.
And the problem is we're not given the resources, the information, the products. We're not given what we need. Like, I hate social media because I see women or businesses on social media selling shea butter, like, oh, use this shea butter, it will grow your hair. Like, no, it won't.
Yeah.
And they are capitalizing on what is one of the most devastating things a woman can experience. And I don't want to do that. If our products can't help you, don't buy them.
Yeah.
But let's look at how we can help you. Is it emotional support? Is it access to a dermatologist? Is it getting you through the process of acceptance? Like, how can Nyla's be a
Yeah.
beneficial to our community? I am the community. I am a woman who has gone through this. I know what it's like. It's not nice. And I don't want to capitalize on that. I want to help.
I think
So
that is
sorry.
part of the problem. No, no, I'm appreciate again the how candid you're being here. But I think part of the problem is because we are bombarded with so much information, whether it be social media or brands. As you said, we've never had this much access to different brands and voices and opinions. And one person will say rosemary is the be all and end all, someone else will say something else entirely different. So it is really hard to have that discernment now. And when you're in a space of desperation looking for the solutions, you'll try everything. So I'm so happy because I know that you are a real genuine person. And I
Yeah,
know you've got the right intentions as well. And I know, as you said, because you have got that thirst for knowledge, you know, you will
yeah,
deep dive and you will get the solutions. And as you said, even if it's not being able to restore the hair completely, because as you said, you'd be a billionaire if you was able to find that missing ingredient, but you can get them to that place of acceptance. You know,
yeah.
it's a really, really beautiful
Acceptance
thing.
and help. For those who we can help, we will help. We want
Yeah,
to help everybody. But what I don't want to do is misinform and mislead.
yeah,
Like we're
yeah,
not here for that. Like
yeah,
we are a brand of integrity, you know, and it can be difficult sometimes because when we're giving, you know, if you tell somebody castor oil's not working, but their auntie swears by it. You know, sometimes on our social media, people are like, well, you know, this isn't correct because, and I love that because it gives me an opportunity to be like, well, if, you know, let me share the science, let me share the data, let me share the thought processes behind and give you this information and do with that what you will,
yeah.
right? But this is why we're saying the things that we're saying. And yeah, it might be contrary to our traditions of greasing the scalp, but you know, that hasn't been working for us. So let's look at you know other things.
Other things. Absolutely. So my this leads next, sorry, nicely on to the final question, because I know I'm wary of taking up quite a lot of your time this morning. So finally, how do you hope your brand will contribute to the change in conversation about hair loss within the Black hair care sector?
I will fundamentally I want us to educate. I want us to educate, bring awareness to hair loss, and I want us to be the brand that ethically, the key word, help to restore healthy hair growth,
Yeah.
where there is the opportunity for that to happen.
Fantastic. Perfect closing words. And Cam, where can people find you and find Nyla's and be able to purchase and find out more about the products themselves?
And so Nyla's is available online at nylasnaturals.com. We are also on all major social media platforms. So you can find us on Instagram at nyla.uk.
Mhm.
Twitter is the same, Facebook. I don't think we're on X yet.
Yeah.
Um, and you can find me.
Everyone's leaving X from what I've been told. Yeah.
You can find me on Instagram at Kameese Davis and LinkedIn, Kameese Davis.
Amazing. Well, I'm wishing you, you know, all the best for the rest of the year, even though you've only got a few more weeks, and also some more incredible things to come in 2025. I'm really excited for you and
Thank
really,
you.
really, yeah, excited about where you will take this hair loss initiative that you're obviously really passionate about, and it's really, really important as well.
Thank
So,
you.
so best of luck. Thank you for your time. We've been on here for almost an hour now, so I'm gonna let you go and enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we will speak soon.
Keisha.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Have a good day. Take care. Bye.